Hello and welcome to India's World. Nepal's Tarai region is on the boil again. This time around, the Tarai residents known as Madhesis are protesting the plan to hold local body elections before their demand for amending the constitution are met. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal had formed his government with the support of the Madhes parties and the Nepali Congress. He came to power on the promise that he would amend the constitution to address the grievances of the country's Madhesi population and the Janjatis. He did register a constitution amendment bill proposing the creation of a second province in the Tarai region of Nepal and to address three other key issues: citizenship, representation in the upper house, and recognition of languages spoken in various parts of the country. However, he is in no position to ensure a safe passage for the bill, as the amendment move does not have two-thirds support in Parliament. Meanwhile, the government has announced that local body elections would be held in the country on May 14th. This has upset the Madhesis of Tarai. They have given Prime Minister Dahal an ultimatum of 7 days to postpone the local body elections and warned him that they could withdraw support to the government. To discuss the latest turmoil in Nepal and its possible consequences, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Rakesh Sood. He has served as India's ambassador to Afghanistan, Nepal and France. He was also ambassador and permanent representative to the Conference of Disarmament in Geneva. He has also served as Deputy Chief of Mission in the Embassy of India in Washington, D.C. We have with us Professor S.D. Muni, one of our foremost experts in South Asia and Nepal, who is a distinguished fellow at the Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis, and Professor Emeritus at JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University. He was also India's ambassador to Laos. Ambassador Rajiv Sikri, a highly experienced diplomat, he retired as secretary in the Foreign Office. Among other countries, he has also served in the Indian mission in Nepal and is the author of Challenge and Strategy, Rethinking India's Foreign Policy. I welcome you, gentlemen, to this discussion. Ambassador Sikri, let me begin with you. Why is the ruling class in Nepal unable to come to terms with the demands of the country's Madhesi population? And is the present crisis in Nepal the result of this inability of sections of the Bahun Kshetri elite or the Pahari elite of Nepal to make concessions to the Madhesis of Tarai?
Absolutely. As we know, Nepal has been ruled by the Brahman Kshetri elite and the Nevaris of Kathmandu Valley for decades. And the Madhesis have been treated like a colonized people. So after the monarchy was abolished, after a new constitution was brought into effect, the Madhesis expect that there would be something in it for them, some power sharing. And that has been belied because the ruling elite of the hills is unwilling to share power. The Madhesis are looked upon very derisively, and they are as somehow lower category of people. I recall I was in Nepal from 81 to 84, and I recall that the Tarai problem arose at that time. It was the beginnings of that. At that time, there were issues of, will you wear a dhoti? Can you speak in Hindi? But it had the makings of a crisis. So it has come to the fore because in the changed political environment, the Madhesis have got nothing. So long as the king was ruling, that was the cover, that, okay, here's the king and so forth. And it was the king's rule. But now things have changed, and that's why they are unable to reconcile that they haven't got anything.
Okay. Professor Muni, that's the background. But is there a way in which Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal, who has said that he would change the constitution and meet the demands of the Madhesis, can he get the constitution amended before the local body elections? And if he could not get the bill passed, why on earth did he introduce it?
Well, he introduced also as a part of the promise to the Madhesis that I will at least introduce the bill. The problem which Prachanda is facing are manifold in the constitutional amendment issue. Number one is the UML opposition. They don't want anything to happen in order to accommodate the Tarai demands, particularly the reorganization of the states. And this is where it is stuck, and without that you can't even have proper elections in one way or the other. Secondly, like it or not, even within Nepali Congress, there are strong constituencies which are bought on the hill nationalism and do not want accommodation with the Tarai, and they say our constitution is best. Now, if that is the combination, particularly in alliance between Prachanda and Nepali Congress, you can see that the Prime Minister is caught between the two. So what he has done is there are two compulsions. One is the constitutional amendment. The other compulsion is the constitution implementation. Now, constitutional implementation, because of 18 January, they have to have elections, and at the same time you have to have constitutional amendment. Now, this is where he has got sandwiched politically.
Ambassador Sood, is there a practical way at all of amending the constitution without bringing down the current government? And would even the fall of Prachanda's government ensure that Madhesi demands are met?
Well, Prachanda became Prime Minister last year on the understanding that he would run the government for 9 months, and then he would hand over to the Nepali Congress leadership, to Mr. Sher Bahadur Deuba. Now, during his 9 months, Prachanda also took on the responsibility of conducting the local body elections, and the national elections which are to follow in the next 9-month period would be conducted under the Prime Ministership of Sher Bahadur Deuba, the Nepali Congress leader. The problem is that the local body elections, and these include elections to the panchayats, village panchayats, to the sub-metropolitan areas and to the municipal corporations of the metropolitan areas, numbering nearly 1,000 local bodies, that these elections lose credibility in the absence of the constitutional amendment, which is necessary to demarcate federal boundaries.
We are going to come to that. We're going to discuss that in a bit. But let's understand the general principles first. What does KP Oli's Communist Party of Nepal, UML, United Marxist-Leninists, hope to gain by opposing the creation of a second province in Tarai, or by conceding the demands made by Madhesis and Janjatis? What do they lose?
I think, if there is a united Tarai province, that gives more political power to the Madhesis. Otherwise, they are splintered. Now, the way the various divisions of Nepal have been worked out, it is ensured that there is a Madhesi component everywhere, and the sources of water and land are sort of skewed in such a manner that the Madhesis will always have a controlling stake. So there is a very there are important economic factors also behind this. Now, if there was a united Madhesh province, they can bargain more.
I don't think they are asking for a united Madhesh province. They are asking for one more Madhesh province where those areas which are merged with
even if there are two or three, so long the present boundaries are such that the Madheshis are splintered and fragmented.
Okay. Quickly.
Well, there are 20 districts that border India, which is known as the Tarai. Out of that, as currently stands, 8 of those districts have been put together and to constitute one Madhesh-dominated or, Madhesh-dominated province, which is in the eastern part. The amendment proposal actually goes a step further and also takes a number of these districts on the western side and puts them together to constitute yet another Madhesh majority province. So that way there would be 2 provinces which would have Madhesh majority.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll continue with this discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the latest turmoil in Nepal, where the Madhesi parties of Nepal are protesting against the local body elections. Professor Muni, how should one view UML's Mechi Mahakali Abhiyan, which has led to latest clashes, 4 people being shot dead by the police in Saptari? Is the UML trying to mobilize people on some kind of xenophobic platform, ultra-nationalist platform, which is also perceived by many as anti-India?
No, this is true. In fact, I wanted to link it up with your earlier question of why Oli is opposed to it. And you can take Oli, UML as a stroke. There are 2 problems. One is the personality problem of Mr. Oli, and second is linked.
What is the personality problem of Mr. Oli?
I'm just coming. And linked to it is the political problem. The personality problem is of his elections. Please call it at a time when he was contesting for the Prime Ministership. He was contesting on an understanding with the Nepali Congress that after Sushil Koirala has framed the constitution, he would become the Prime Minister. Now, at that time, he was opposed by Sushil Koirala, and then later on he ran into the so-called blockade and there were problems about it. So he thought India has pitted itself against him. This is his personality problem, and therefore he whipped up the hill upper caste nationalism against India and Tarai.
He wasn't alone. I mean, there were sections of Kathmandu media.
But he took the lead.
Berserk.
If he had not taken the lead, the media and other stakeholders may not have been able to polarize the whole country in such a manner. And then, as a Prime Minister, he carried on with that campaign. And he has found a great asset in this polarization for the UML. Therefore, now UML thinks that they are not accepted in Tarai, and now going to campaign to see lost their constituency in one way or the other.
Mr. Sikri, do you think Oli's aim is to create such a constitutional crisis for the alliance government led by Prachanda that the Hal's term is cut short? Sher Bahadur Deuba does not assume the prime ministership, and there are new consultations for forming a government wherein he may, or his party may again pitch in to lead the government.
Well, that could be his calculation, but I'm not sure that the outcome would be as he desires. Because the last crisis brought out, I hope the parties in Nepal understand, that you cannot ignore the voice of the Madheshis, that agitation, that blockade. Okay, it has ended now, but it could very easily revive. And if it revives, it could be in a more extreme form, which would really complicate the situation.
So could it be just playing a destructive game?
Oh, he is.
Okay, Rakesh, is it correct, as some people say, that local body elections are in the domain of provincial governments? And unless provincial elections are held and provincial governments assume power, local body elections have no meaning.
Well, local body elections have not been held for nearly 20 years.
1997 was the last.
So therefore, in a sense, they are due. And there is a report has already been produced in January, which spells out the local bodies. However, what brings into question the legitimacy is that unless the provincial boundaries are demarcated, it becomes difficult, because that will have an impact on the politics of the different local bodies at the grassroots level. And that is what the Madhesis are objecting to.
Yeah. Professor Muni, shouldn't the, taking this point further, shouldn't the federal and provincial polls be held first? Or is the government trying to hold local body polls because they're easier to hold and have not been held since 1997, as he said?
Local bodies elections are also a part of the rigmarole that is, which is accepted universally by everybody. And at the same time, they want to hold elections, and provincial boundaries question comes in also because changing of the provincial boundaries would change the context of the local elections.
Absolutely.
And that is why, the Madhesh is insisting that you first bring about a constitutional change. Without that, they will have a local election which will not be acceptable to them or favorable to them.
Yeah.
So there is a whole lot of local politics and the constituencies involved in the whole question, which is being articulated in the form of constitutional provisions in one way or the other.
My question was that provincial government should hold local body elections, not the federal government.
No, but the initial constitutional thrust was that all the three constitutions have to be held. All the three elections have to be held.
Yeah.
Without that, the constitution is not implemented.
Okay.
So first it happens, and once you have provincial bodies, since you don't have provincial bodies, who will hold the provincial elections?
Exactly. So, Mr. Sikri, would it not make sense to first settle provincial boundaries, settle the map of Nepal, and if there's going to be a new province, let there be a new province, and then hold these elections? So Madhesis are right. They're not wrong in demanding what they're demanding.
That is the crux of the issue. That are the ruling elite of the hills willing to give up power to the Madheshis? Clearly they are not. Whether UML is against it, elements in the Congress are against it, so it becomes very difficult. And even Prachanda, I'm not sure, how much he is there. Because the elite of Nepal who are ruling think in one way. They may belong to different parties and the degree may vary, but otherwise they don't want to share power. And that is the crux of the problem.
You wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that, look, in all the three major parties, if there is anyone which is more sympathetic relatively to the Madhesh cause, it is the Maoists. Let us not forget it.
Because they had a federalist platform.
Not only that, they have constituencies there which they have lost, which they would like to regain again. Therefore, in political terms, you know, when we talk about the Prime Minister, I think he, amongst the three, has the largest stakes to see that the Madheshis are on the board.
Okay. Rakesh, what was the compulsion to hold local body elections in May this year? Why in May this year? Is it a constitutional requirement that this election be held first? Because the Constitution says all the three elections must be held by January 2018.
It's not a constitutional requirement. I think it was more a question of division of responsibility. And naturally, the sitting government, the government sitting in power in Kathmandu, has an ability to influence elections. However, to be fair, and that is why Prachand took on the role that he would, that it was during his tenure that the local body elections would be held. However, to be fair to Prachand, he did realize the importance of first pushing the constitutional amendment, and therefore he undertook consultations with the Madhesis, tabled, and to show his good faith, he actually registered his amendment bill. But as has been already pointed out, the amendment cannot pass because the amendment does not have two-thirds support. And meanwhile, the Madhesis are getting impatient. And now the Madhesis have been angered because of his announcing the date without, they feel that he has not moved strongly enough to push the amendment bill.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break again. We'll be back with this discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the latest protests by Nepal's Madhesi parties against holding local body elections. Professor Muni, you wanted to say something before we went on the break.
Yes, I wanted to say the point has slipped out of me. All I was saying is that Prachanda has when he became Prime Minister, he faced a credibility crisis. And they said that the Maoist has messed up the whole situation. Therefore, both the constitutional implementation and the Madhesh accommodation are actually part of his agenda to rehabilitate himself. And as such, it weighs more heavily on him politically than any other individual.
Ambassador Sikri, could there be a reverse case? I mean, let's be the devil's advocate, saying that let's hold the local body elections first and constitutional amendment will come later. What is it that forces the Madhesis to say that no, first do the constitutional amendment? Is it because they feel they might get cheated again?
Yes. I think they don't have any trust in the establishment. They feel that once the election process begins, then the pressure will build up on them to accept what is there, and all their demands will be put on the back burner. And I think one other point I just want to mention, I think Prachand probably realizes that the factors which led to the rise of the Maoists in Nepal, the grassroots support they have, that could go to the Madheshis now.
In the Tarai?
In the Tarai. And that could create a problem. Because, so you cannot sort of keep pushing this under the carpet.
Okay.
This is a danger.
Yeah, the point I wanted to add was that somewhere the Madheshi informally gave an understanding that if you at least move the constitutional amendment in the parliament, they would think that partly their demand has been accommodated. Now there is the shifting of the goalposts.
By the Madhesis?
To some extent, I think. And that was not a part of the formal agreement. Therefore, what I am saying is there is some confusion as to what extent Madheshis wanted constitutional amendment first, or they were happy at least to show the intent of the government once you move the constitution.
Could it be that the Madhesis have changed their mind because of the report of that committee that was set up on local body reconstruction, that they came up with 719 local bodies, then there was a government review which said no, 25 more could be added. And the Madhesis feel that the local bodies in Tarai, where they would have a say, are unjustifiably low in number. And therefore, let's first then demarcate the province. Yes. The number of local bodies would go up and they would have better representation.
Certainly, that is very much part of the calculus. But I think Ambassador Sikri is absolutely right when he said that what is missing is trust. Let's not forget that actually the Nepali Congress, UML and Prachand and the Maoists all came together. All three parties headed by Bahuns and Kshetris, they all came together to adopt a constitution. And in a rush, when they did that, they completely ignored the Madhesis. And I think that betrayal rankles. So therefore, there is a complete lack of trust. And unfortunately, Prachand has not been able to rebuild that trust with the Madhesi community.
Okay. Professor Muni, should the Madhesis, for pragmatic reasons, reconsider their inflexible position and say, all right, let's hold these local body elections, but if more local bodies are created, we'll hold elections for them also, and pave the way for constitutional amendment by showing flexibility?
I wish they could, but I think they are also caught in a political dilemma, and the political dilemma is the rise of an extremist Madhesi opinion. And you would recall that in Rupandehi or when the C.K. Raut had his rally, there were thousands of people there. I mean, it was a massive demonstration of a support for him.
But isn't C.K. Raut a mirror image of Oli? Both extremely xenophobic, both extremely
no, but C.K. Raut's position has been consistent. Oli has changed his position on constitutional issue, but let's not compare it. And that has rattled the Madhesh leadership, that if we are not able to deliver this time and show that we are the true representative of yours, C.K. Raut would take the sails out of their winds.
And as you know, C.K. Raut is talking about secession.
Secession. This is a question to all of you, so please take time answering this, because this is the most important question to my mind, which is what kind of constitutional and political crisis would emerge if the government is unable to hold elections and is also unable to amend the constitution and the mandated period gets over? That is, nothing happens till January 2018. So beginning with you.
You know, what is happening in Nepal for the last few years brings to mind the situation that was in India in the 40s, before partition, when the Muslim League and the Congress and this whole business of sharing power was there. And because the two sides could not agree on a mutually agreeable, satisfactory power sharing arrangement, we stumbled into partition.
Except that in Nepal, they already have a federal structure in place,
that's all right.
which allows for
that's all right. But I'm trying to say that, you know, when one party feels that its demands are just being ignored, then they adopt extremist postures. And you can stumble into a very difficult scenario from where it is difficult to get out, because public positions get hardened. I just hope that it doesn't evolve in that direction, because the consequences will be horrendous for Nepal and for India.
Yeah. So,
I fear that what scenario you was portraying, there are powerful vested interests and stakeholders who would want that to happen.
the worst case scenario to
yes,
be
the
realized.
worst case scenario, because there are people who are saying that these democratic Republican Johnnies have not been able to deliver in Nepal. They must go and get back to monarchy, get back to a system which is far more authoritarian or whatever else it is. And I think there are constituencies of this point of view almost in all the political parties, perhaps even sections of Maoists who have gone out of
So you're saying
there
are monarchists who are planning this, or there are outside forces who are supporting monarchy?
No, monarchy itself is wanting to get back. You know, the way King has become active in the last few months is nobody's business. Therefore, he has his stakes, and other political parties, in every political party there is a constituency.
What do you have to say on this?
Well, if the national, I don't think that there will be a huge crisis or an unmanageable crisis if the local body elections are not held. However, if the national elections are not held on schedule, then certainly we will have a
provincial elections.
Well, national elections are, I think, far more critical, and the handing over of power by Prachand to
there should be next
Sushil
parliament.
Koirala.
He's right, absolutely.
So, if from that point of view, that would lead to a full-blown crisis with the kind of worst-case scenario eventualities, because people will lose faith. Because let's not forget that in 2008, when the elections took place, there were two new forces that emerged through the ballot box. One was the Maoists, and the other was the Madhesis. If elections are not held now, national elections, then both these forces will feel cheated.
Okay. You wanted to add
I
something?
just want to say that the one factor that was holding Nepal together was the monarchy. When that was abolished, you needed to evolve a more egalitarian system where everyone could share power. That has not happened. So unless all sections, all stakeholders in Nepal have a share in power, I think it's going to be very difficult to keep Nepal as a united entity because it's so diverse.
Well, I'm glad you're saying this because I almost thought you were going to make a case for return of monarchy, but you're not doing that. You're actually making a case for a democratic, egalitarian system. We've really run out of time. I'd like to thank all of you, Ambassador Rajiv Sikri, Professor S.D. Muni, Ambassador Rakesh Sood for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again as usual next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for joining us on India's World.